What's up, traders? It's time for the monthly market wrap up. We're going to take a look at the major market indices. Before we get started, just want to remind you this is not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. These markets are extremely volatile, so please do your own research and trade responsibly. All right, so get us started here. I got the Dow Jones Industrial pulled up on the monthly, and as we can see, this thing is as up and to the right as it gets. And here, way up in this little spot here, is the end of the 100-year trek of the Dow Jones, and that's where we're currently at. And I think it's important to take this long look at everything in log scale and see, wait a minute, does it seem more probable than not that we're going to top out here and roll over? Or does it seem like, well, it's probably a good idea actually just the market keeps on trekking along and goes to new highs? So let's switch over to our candlesticks and jump back in here. But obviously, as far as the 200 moving averages are concerned, they're up and to the right. They're both slope blue, and that is a bull market. But if we just zoom way in here on the monthly at the most relevant price action, this is our Rona low right here in March of 2020. This was our recent low right here in September of 2022. And obviously we had a strong trend on the way up as the 821 bull cross happened. And then we talked about caution here and de-risking as the 821 bear cross happened. But now, since we crossed back to the upside again, while we still want to be cautious of the market, it's possible that we oscillate and see fake outs to the upside or downside. We have to trust that as long as we're above those levels and they're green, the trend is still strong. So we actually threatened to break down from that trend here, found some very strong support at the 21. And then in the last 2 months now, we have closed back above it again, and we actually are looking pretty strong here. If we just turn on our indicator oscillators, we'll notice there was a bunch of red histograms, the red slope line, and we saw some green histograms here, so it's still a little bit sketchy there. We see the hard buy signal coming in on the monthly with that most recent close. So as far as the monthly is concerned, everything on this chart is bullish with the exception of the red slope line and us being below it. And if we drop back down here to the weekly, we'll see we're still above the 200 exponential and simple moving average. And while we're starting to lose momentum to the upside for our consolidation, the 200 simple is on top and the 821 are bull crossed once again. And as far as the TD MACD, the slope line is blue. We're above the zero line and we see multiple green histograms in a row. And we're also getting a hard buy signal on the jewel thief as well on the weekly. So again, everything bullish. And then if we just come down here to the daily, we'll see that we've been bouncing around above the 200 moving averages, consolidating. And now both those moving averages are blue. We have an 821 bull cross here, and we're still continuing on that move. So as far as I'm concerned right now, everything still looks bullish on the Dow Jones. And one thing that's nice about my system is I fully trust it. So as long as it's telling me we're in a bull market, in a bull trend, and likely to move to the upside, I'm not going to fight the market, especially when it goes up like 75% of the time. So Dow Jones is looking bullish still. All right, and here we are on the SPX S&P 500, and we're just going to do the same thing. Jump over here to the monthly, and we'll see that we have the 821 bear cross. We have crossed it back to the upside now. We closed above it, and now we have opened one candle and closed another candle above it. And to me, that is bullish. Again, same situation. We have the red slope line on the TD MACD. We're approaching it from underneath, so it is definitely possible we get rejected. It's possible we print bearish divergence, put in a new high, and then this rolls over. Any of those things are possible, but none of them are going to happen while the 821 are bull crossed, while we're about to get a hard buy signal on the monthly and multiple green histograms above the zero line. Just doesn't happen. So for now, I'm just going to trust the system, and I'm bullish. If we go back down to the weekly, again, we see the same thing. The 200 simple is crossing above the 200 exponential. We're above all of them. The 8 and 21 are bull crossed, and we just took out the recent high. We have a blue slope line on the TD MACD and all green histograms, and we're above the zero line. We have a hard buy signal on the weekly jewel thief as well. So again, I got to trust the system, and it says we're bullish. And then finally, just switching down to the daily, we'll see we took out that previous high right here. We saved the 821 bull cross. We're above both the 200 moving averages, and they are blue. Multiple green histograms above the slope line, above the zero line. Slope is still red for now, but very close to flipping back blue. And we did just recently get a hard sell signal and left the bullish control zone. The Stochs are still moving to the downside, but we see they're starting to kind of go sideways there as well. So again, everything looking bullish on the S&P. All right, and next we're going to take a look at the IXIC, the NASDAQ composite on the monthly, and we'll see this one is not quite as strong here. We are back above the 8 and 21, but they have not gotten the bull cross yet. So while the NASDAQ has been relatively strong lately, a lot of that is based off of just how relatively weak it has been leading up to it. We do have multiple green histograms. We're still below the zero, and we do have a red slope line, so we don't want to get too bullish here. But we see the stochastics have exited the bearish control zone, and they're very close to a hard buy signal. So while this one's not quite as bullish yet, and the possibility of a rejection is much more likely, it still looks pretty good on the monthly. And if we go down to the weekly here, we'll see we're above all the moving averages. The 8, the 21, and both 200s all still have a positive slope and are oriented as they should be. We see multiple green histograms above the zero line, above the slope line, and the slope is blue, and we're also entering into the bullish control zone. So it looks like the NASDAQ on the weekly definitely still has some potential legs here. And if we go down to the daily as well, we have closed at resistance here, and it looks like this wants to push up higher. It's possible we get rejected by the red slope line here, but it does look like the stochastics are attempting to turn back to the upside. Again, we're above all of the moving averages, and everything's where it should be. So it definitely looks like the NASDAQ is going to try one more time to the upside here. And last but not least, we're just going to take a look at the Russell on the monthly here. And we do see the Russell is substantially weaker. We got the 821 bear cross here. It tried to cross back to the upside and failed, got rejected. And now we actually closed that recent monthly candle at our previous low right here. So it looks like the Russell actually is substantially weaker. If this area holds, we're getting the hard buy signal, and maybe we see this start moving back to the upside. But if not, it's very likely we're coming back down here to retest the lows around 1667. The monthly does not look good for the Russell. And if we go over to the weekly, we see the same thing here. We're consolidating as where all of the other indices are above the moving averages. The Russell is actually below all those moving averages. And while we are above the slope line and it is blue, we have red histograms and we're below the zero line. The stochastics are still angled to the downside and very close to entering into the bearish control zone on the weekly. So the Russell again is bearish. And then finally, we have the Russell on the daily, and we'll see that it did get above the 200 moving averages here, but those failed. We crossed back down, and while one is sloped to the upside, one is sloped to the downside, and we're below all those moving averages. So again, this is still bearish. Now we are consolidating. It's possible that if the other indices start moving to the upside, the Russell could get dragged along as well. But we see substantially more weakness in the Russell. And even though the relative recent performance of the NASDAQ has been great compared to the other indices off the bottom, the NASDAQ is still substantially weaker than the Dow Jones or the S&P. So I have to say, I'm still cautiously optimistic on the markets, but I gauge the overall strength and sentiment of the markets based on the Dow Jones and the S&P. The NASDAQ is great, obviously more of a risk-on play. The Russell is good in certain times as well. And I understand why there's been a narrative recently that has shifted between growth and value and tech and small business and big business and international versus domestic investment and bonds over stocks. And there's just a lot of confusion in the market right now. And a lot of things are consolidating right around what would be either a bull market or a bear market. So we are getting some mixed signals from the market, but as far as I'm concerned, as long as the S&P and Dow Jones are strong on the long time frames like the monthly and weekly, and also our shorter time frames like the daily, I'm just going to trust the system and stay risk on. So yeah, that's our monthly market wrap up for the major indices. And I do want to remind you, this is not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. These markets are extremely volatile, so please do your own research and trade responsibly. So yeah, that was fun. Just a quick little monthly market wrap up for the major indices. Crypto Trend Trader, and I'll catch you on the flip side.